Good afternoon, people of grace. It's Thursday, and I am doing your Pastoral Connect today. And I want to start off by reading Psalm 103, verses 1 through 5. It's a very familiar psalm to many of us, written by David. And David writes the following words: Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. David had this ability, as a man after God's own heart, to be able to step back and coach his own soul, to really lead his own soul into a better place. And the soul is that part of us that God would truly rather die than leave behind. Christ came to save each one of our souls. And that's really what we need to be kind of leaning into whenever something like this happens, which hopefully for us is a once in a lifetime experience, where we are facing a pandemic. But in this 103rd Psalm, David shows great confidence in God's ability to forgive all our iniquities, to heal all our diseases, to redeem our life from the pit. And David, in his most inspired moments, speaks that way. But Peter notes in the book of Acts that really David's hopeful words are something that we have to take beyond the grave. Peter notes with the finality of death that David died and that his tomb was in Jerusalem. And so David was really kind of a foreshadowing of the one who was to come, that is Jesus. And this is important for us to grasp, especially at a time like this. And that brings me to Hebrews chapter 5, verses 7 through 9, which is a bit of a preview for the sermon this Sunday, where Jesus is facing a strong affliction. And the author of Hebrews notes that when Jesus was on earth, he offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him, to God the Father, who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. So Jesus was saved from death, but how? He was saved from death by going through death. And that's what brings all of these hopeful aspirations that David was able to verbalize and even experience in his own life. That's what brings it down to where the rubber meets the road, because we all have times in our life where life is so hard that we just want to be delivered. And that's totally legitimate in and of itself. That's a desire that Jesus himself felt. But we have to be very grounded in our faith and understand something. And I put a statement on Facebook yesterday, a short statement, and I want to read that to you. Many of you have already seen it if you're on Facebook. And here it is. The world today operates, and now I quote Chesterton, the world today operates by consuming the world's limited resources to produce an ever-expanding stream of products which are designed to wear out or become quickly outmoded, and for which the need, and all of us are feeling on need right now, and a lot of those needs are legitimate, but in the context of this quote, and for which the need of all these things we've been consuming is more often than not created by advertising and not by necessity. It's created by advertising. It's created by the media to appeal to desires in us, to cause us to feel a neediness. And after decades of this kind of consumeristic grooming, COVID-19 has exposed the fragility of this false, shallow kind of self that we have all been addicted to for a long time. The false self, conditioned its whole life by this grooming, is taking a beating these last few weeks. And COVID-19 is terrible, but the beating that this false self is taking does not have to be terrible. It's not terrible. If we respond the right way, it can be redemptive. If we have faith and courage to be who God created us to be, then we can come through this better served for it. Because remember David, remember Jesus. Jesus was delivered from death, but not by escaping death. And we all have to come to a realization, especially people of faith, that Earth is our Alamo. Um, we're not getting out alive. And things like the COVID-19 pandemic actually kind of just drive us to admit it. It pierces through the illusion we all live in that we can just kind of like keep churning along in this shallow way and not really have to deal with the realities of the curse we're under, a curse that Jesus took in his own body and was delivered from for our sake so that we could be delivered. And that's kind of the challenge for us, is to not lose the lessons we lose in a disillusioning time. Not lose the lessons we can gain, in a time that of itself is disillusioning. But disillusioning times do not have to crush us if we're willing to lay down our illusions and allow them to be dissed and kind of dig deeper and find the path through the valley of the shadow of death. And I'm optimistic that we will. I see signs even in our greater culture that cause me to be optimistic. I see our government actually, despite the crazy political polarization of the last years, trying to come together. I see our private sector stepping up to the task, converting air filter systems in F-150 pickup trucks to ventilators. And there's just so many examples of that. Alcohol distilleries creating hand sanitizer. On and on and on. Seeing these kinds of things happen reminds me of the most beautiful examples of the American experiment of limited government and private sector in their best moments working together. It reminds me of things I read about before World War II. And that's the American experiment. I'm not even really primarily talking about that, though I am optimistic. I want to focus on the church. The church is Jesus's experiment, and he's going to make sure that experiment succeeds. But you and I have our part to play to make sure that it succeeds in us as a local body, as a church. And I've had conversations with a lot of you over these last few days, and I'm very optimistic, and I'm very, really proud of you, and encouraged by what I'm hearing. And I want you to be encouraged as well. Tap into that Davidic ability that was really just a shadow of Christ himself to say, "Oh, my soul, why are you downcast within me? The Lord's bigger than this." And he redeems us from all these things. And we just need the faith and the courage to represent him well in it. So I hope that this talk has strengthened your faith. I hope it's encouraged you. And I look forward to seeing you again on Sunday. Enjoy this day and make it a good day. Be blessed.